So let's look at the animation for this logo. So if I just play through, you can see we're just focused on that first shot and the all is being revealed. And really the main work, the main animation here is down to the camera. We're not actually really animating too much of the word. If we open up the logo null and the all, the sweeps are doing all the animation here. So if we look at the sweep A, you can see here that the start and end growth is being animated just here. And you can see that one that's highlighted there is the one I'm referring to. And that's just coming down and coming around. And as that's happening, we've got other details. If I just cycle through them, we've got another one on the A, which is just coming up around the top. One on the first L, which is just creeping down and coming underneath. Got another one on the L here, just doing a little move around the top. And another one for the second L, doing something slightly different and something slightly different again with the next one. So like I said, the camera move is what's really giving us the motion here. So let's look at the camera for this particular shot. If I open up the camera's null, we're in shot A, and all I did was I used the camera morph object, which you'll find here, camera morph. And what I do is first I'll set up my first shot. This is where I want to start. Okay, so that's happening there. Then I'll set up where I want to end up. So that's my second shot. And all I've done is make this second camera a child of a null and then animated a bit of the rotation so that we're getting this move here. Next, you select both of the cameras that you want to morph between. And if you have more than two, that's fine. It just changes the mode in the camera morph tag. It goes from simple morph to multi-morph. So a simple morph is just two cameras, and a multi-morph could be many, many cameras. So what you would then do is you select the cameras you want to morph, and it doesn't matter, they can have animation on as well. And then you'd come over to the cameras menu here and then choose camera morph. And what that will do is then create a camera for you with the morph tag on. So if we look through that camera now and just animate the blend, and you can see that's doing essentially the same move. So let's just delete that because we don't need it. And we'll go and look through that shot A camera. Now on the tag, you can see if I twirl down the blend, I've added a curve. So we're kind of easing in and out so that the blend is a bit smoother, less linear. And I can get that kind of drift at the end. So this was really the setup that I used throughout. So let's just look at the second shot. So shot B. Now this is the one of the stars, and the stars are actually animating, and then we've got that drift at the end. So let's look at what's happening with these stars. I'm going to twirl up shot A. Let's just twirl up shot B for now, and all our cameras, and we'll come down here to the top geo and then the stars. Now the stars, what I did was I took all those extrude objects and then I put them into a MoGraph fracture object. This means I can actually access all the MoGraph effectors now and animate these objects. So I've got an effector called plane color. What is that doing? Let's have a look. This is just using the alpha strength. And if I go back to the fracture object here in the transform settings, it's really important. By default, it comes in at white, and it's really important to set it down to black. And that means you can then control the, if I scrub through, you can see they're almost sort of fading in. And I knew when I wanted these to fade in so that when I come to texture them using a MoGraph shader, I can actually have them have their opacity change. So they're fading in and they're moving as well. This is what the second one is doing. You can see that if I enable the fall off, it'll be very easy to see. So if I just make those visible. What I like to do when I'm working with multiple shots, if I just press Shift V and bring up the HUD settings, I turn on camera, then I can choose between all the cameras in my scene, and I can quickly just come back out to the default camera here and just show you what's happening with that fall off. So I have the first plain color, which should be really sort of plain fade in or something like that, because that's what it's doing. I like to name them how they're actually doing. So that is, if we look in the coordinates, that's actually moving across. So that's creating that effect of them fading in. Now in exactly the same position, I have another plane effector, and it is a child of the moving one, so the fade in, so it's going to move at the same time. And all that is going to do is move the clones, the top stars here, out on the z-axis, so they're being pushed outwards. So it's happening at the same time. So that's what that's doing. And then we have the sweeps that we set up, and they, if we go into the coordinates, let's have a look at those. Now these are just being scaled up. So if I look in the details here, so all I'm doing is scaling up those details. You can see we've got absolutely nothing, and then it scales up to our resting point where we have that zigzag pattern, and it just adds a bit of interest in as the camera's panning past. So let's just come back into that shot B, and we'll just play through it, and you can see what's going on in that animation. Let's take a look at shot C. So in shot C, okay, so this is the one where the word sports is being animated in, and you can see it's quite a long shot. We could have even just used this as the final reveal. Now I'm going to come over to the word sports here, and what's actually happening is we've got each row in a fracture object. And I think I added that into another fracture object, and then I could add effectors on that. So the effector that is controlling this is the random effector, and I've made the start position to be 1000 units. Now if I come back out to the default camera, you can see, let's just focus in on this. You can see how it's all broken apart in a random fashion, and we can control that here. All we're doing is animating the strength of the effector from 100% down to 0, and it just creates this effect of the word forming. So that's quite fun and very simple to do once you see it all broken down. It looks a lot more complex if we actually look close up, but really when you zoom out and you see it through the default camera, it's actually very simple. So by having that camera close up, we're kind of, and this would all be blurred out using depth of field, we're hiding those details over there. And in fact, you can see by this gray, if I make Shift V, if I go to the view and the tinted border, that's not actually going to be seen in the shot. So that's kind of not going to be rendered. You can see that a lot of that is actually even out of shot. So I'm just change that back down to 10. So yeah, and when we play through, we can see that that logo is, that word is forming. And next up, we'll go down to the bottom geo and the sports icons, and we'll change our shot over to be, I didn't use some of these shots, as you'll notice. I set up a few more just to kind of give myself some more options, but I never ended up using them. But the method was the same. If we come into the final shot, which is shot F, let's look at that one. This was the most complex one, I think, that I used because it has more than 2 cameras. So we've got the first shot here, where we're focused on the sport icons, and then pulling back a little bit, and then the final resolve. And they all have a bit of movement on them, or I wanted to put them into a rig so that I'd have the option of the control. And so if we look through that shot camera now and just have a look at the tag, you can see that it's not just that simple morph anymore, it's a multi-morph, and you get a list where you can actually drag in your cameras and you can reorganize them and reorder them if you prefer. So this will jump around a bit. If we just look at that, we're going, all right, crazy, very close, and that just doesn't work. So let's just change the order back to be the 1, 2, 3. That makes more sense now. And I'll just twirl that list up and come down here. And what's happening in this shot is we have, again, that trick of fading in the geometry. I'm going to come into the sports icons, and you can see the sports icons have all been put into a fracture object, and this is such a great way of just adding normal objects into the MoGraph system. It just means then you can then add effectors on. So if I turn that off, that might be probably changing the weight. Let's have a look. Now, if we look in the parameters of this MoGraph tag, it's actually, yes, it is just a random color. Okay. That then would probably not needed for this example. So we can just see that I've got the fade in, and it's exactly the same method that I said before. So you can see them fade in slightly, and we also have a move as well. So you can see there that the parameter in the z-axis is 32 units. So if we look in the coordinates, yep, that's just moving out, and that is really, in essence, everything that's happening here. So once it's all broken down, you can see that by adding camera moves, but adding detail as well, and then being able to sort of make the shot seem a bit more complex by being tighter on it. And this is also something to consider when you're setting up your cameras. Just going into the cameras here. In the object, I chose a really wide lens on these as well, just so I'd get those extreme values that I thought of in my plan. And you can see the perspective lines. So this was a look at how the logo was animated using various MoGraph elements and also just normal keyframes on properties, and how we set up the multiple cameras. Next, we'll move on to texturing and lighting.